everybody. Welcome back to the Everyday Night. I'm Joe.
And I'm Jeff.
And tonight, Jeff, we are, as we approach the end of the year, doing a year in review in the virtues.
Yes, after a fashion. After we started looking for people to be exemplars and finding out how difficult it is to actually find exemplars of all of our courtesies or all of our virtues in the news. Or people that are heralded or recognized for other virtues. We found this increasingly difficult. And I thought it just is in some ways, a condemnation of where our culture is going, what we consider important, what people we consider important.
And we've discussed this before when talking about the difference between fame in the modern conception and the distinction between renown and infamy in an older conception of it. Yes. And that now it doesn't matter as long as you're famous, right? And I have told people that the old saying of there's no such thing as bad publicity is actually incorrect. There is bad publicity. But then again, I see people who become famous for their bad acts continuing to have some kind of material success. And
right.
So
yeah. Well, there's no consequence really for being impolite. There are.
Well, certainly not online. In person.
Larger, long-lasting consequences. Someone might dislike you for being impolite to them,
right?
But there's no general dismay at someone who is downright rude in public.
I recall when I was teaching the history of design and introducing students to many things that now seem rather tame, that the public was outraged about. People got outraged about many things that now would seem tame. And people now are outraged about all sorts of things, but they're outraged about all sorts of they're inconsequential or misinformed things. They are told something or they read something. We talked about this when we discussed cognitive biases. People hear something, they get outraged about it. Now they're emotionally invested in being outraged about it, and they don't want to admit that it wasn't even true. So it was difficult. We did find some exemplars of the virtues. And I'll save my conclusion until the end here.
Okay.
So the first virtue I would like to mention is prowess.
Oh, wait. I think before we get
yes. How could I forget?
Matters of greater concern.
Yes, absolutely.
And I would like to compliment you on your festive.
Thank you, and you as well. It seemed appropriate for a year in review.
Right, and equally appropriate. I think we have both got a sparkling wine beverage.
Yes. I've both Prosecco. I think I have a Valdobbiadene Prosecco.
Right, and mine is a cheap Mianetto Prosecco because I'm not a connoisseur of these, so it didn't behoove me to spend $30 on a bottle of Prosecco.
And I'll give you some names of some inexpensive and good Prosecco's. So,
Very good.
here's to a good year to you and to all of you.
Good year, new year.
Mm.
Well, that's certainly inoffensive. So,
Well, the very best Prosecco's don't make it to the States.
yeah,
When we were in Italy, we went to just a corner little store. Well, we actually went to a big store, but they had just an amazing selection of food, local food, all of it brilliant. And the selection of wines that we don't see here
sure.
that were really inexpensive. We had some fantastic Prosecco's and just amazing. So anyway, as I was saying, an obvious selection for me for prowess is Simone Biles.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
She is the GOAT as as the contemporary parlance would have, greatest of all time, the most decorated gymnast in history. 29th world championship, 37 medals across championships in the Olympics, and her precision and ability to reproduce what she does time and again is stunning to me. Her athleticism. She reminded me, I was watching a Fred Astaire movie, and his precision and was also born out of the same kind of intense work.
Right.
And that's what leads to prowess. And so here's to
and this also
Ms. Biles.
Miss Biles, certainly. I'm glad I kept the bottle nearby if we're going to be doing this through the whole session.
I should have, didn't I tell you?
No, you didn't warn me. But another thing that this also brings, and you will appreciate that this also goes to sprezzatura, your favorite of our virtues, in that it is so much dedication has led to an apparent ease.
It looks easy because you don't see all the work.
Right.
And the same with Fred Astaire. I mean, he looks
What made me think of it?
Effortless in what he's doing. But we were watching Top Hat, which is one of his movies that he made with Ginger Rogers.
Mm-hmm.
And everything. It's not only the movement, it's not only the body position, but down to the very ends of his hands, held in very precise positions. It's extraordinary.
Now, I wonder how many, we see these in movies, right? Now, these are incredibly long dance sequences with no cuts.
Yes.
And no mistakes.
Yes.
How many? Now, it's possible that there's more than one take to get that perfect performance. But what I've always found about Fred Astaire was that, yes, his hand position, he's very graceful, everything lines perfectly, but he never puts a foot wrong. He never has to make small adjustments. And you see dancers and athletes do it all the time. Small adjustments of their feet to regain their balance. No, his foot hits the floor and it stays there until he lifts it for the next movement. It's absolutely amazing.
Yes. And I would say Simone Biles, in her chosen sport, chosen endeavor, she's the Fred Astaire of gymnastics.
Yes, sure. If you want to say the greatest of all time in anything?
Yes. Yeah.
We could put together a list of endeavors and pick the greatest of all time in
we should do that. We should definitely do that. It's a good idea. and not tell each other our lists,
Okay.
and then discuss them. Who are the greatest of all time? I think that would be, yeah, okay.
So I absolutely agree. Simone Biles replacing Mark Phelps, right, as the most medaled Olympian in history.
Not Mark Phelps,
Michael Phelps.
Michael Phelps.
Michael Phelps.
Who replaced Mark Spitz.
Mark Spitz. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
I conflated those a little bit.
Yeah. Okay.
I heard a comedian, just as a little aside, I heard a comedian talking about how it's not fair that swimmers get so many medals because they're all doing the same thing, just less. You do it. Who was it? It might have been Ricky Gervais who said, "You get freestyle, right? Freestyle swimmers, the fastest times are in freestyle. So they go and they get their record for swimming freestyle, and then they swim again a little less well, in a less efficient way against others swimming in a less efficient way. Then they get lower times, and then they swim in an even less efficient way, and they get so I just thought I never really thought of that.
Yeah, but if you're talking sports have rules. The difference between a fight and a sport is that sports have rules, right?
Sure.
And so you accept the rules and you play by the rules, or should. There are any number of bad examples in sports, people not playing by the rules. And I think we both found, when we were looking for exemplars of the virtues, that we found way more exemplars of the vices, of the bad behavior. So many more. It gets so much more news coverage. The old saying, if it bleeds, it leads. Nobody wants to read good news, and there have been efforts to have good news, and a lot of news programs will end with a good news story. But there is a lot of it was useful. I found this exercise useful in reminding myself that there's good out there, but we have to notice it. We have to look for it, and we have to notice it, and we have to recognize it and acknowledge it.
And we also, well, at least I did, while looking through this, we went through the Times, the New York Times, not the New York
Time Magazine.
Time Magazine's Person of the Year. It was originally Man of the Year, and then they had a woman, so they changed it to Person of the Year. And over time, they've recognized groups of people and things and movements, and even looking at those past ones and seeing where we have kind of come to what they, and to be fair, they are just a group of editors from Time Magazine. There's no polling or vote or anything.
And it is also not an honor, it's an acknowledgement of impact.
Yes.
And I think it would be more accurate to say person with the biggest impact of the year, maybe.
Right.
For example, this year's Person of the Year was Taylor Swift. Is Taylor Swift. And she had an enormous cultural and economic impact by her concert tour and her movie of her concert tour. Big impact. But I thought about her potentially as an exemplar of, I'm not sure exactly what.
Well, that's kind of my point.
Yeah.
She's a performer, fine performer, I guess. I mean,
and writer, and very savvy, very savvy business person. She took control of her own career
Right.
and as she was coming up, that was not done. Women, particularly, but many musicians simply were at the whim of recording companies and
That has changed a
and so
lot.
on.
It's changed a lot in the last 20, 30 years.
It has.
Companies and record producers don't hold the strings anymore.
I
They
think,
haven't for
but
some time.
I think she has taken that independence to a new level. I mean, the reason that Prince went for a while as the artist formerly known as Prince and just a
Right.
symbol was because he had a contract where he had to produce, he couldn't record anything under his own name without it belonging to the record company. So he dropped his name. And it wasn't some affectation, it was a business decision. It was
Right.
a copyright decision. It was an ownership decision. And so I think that issue of ownership and control of your own work is really relevant given AI and
Yeah.
given the companies that are getting rid of staff writers and hiring AI experts to write prompts and the artists whose work has been scraped by AI to to teach their learning models. Um, and now, of course, artists who post their work online are adding some digital information to poison it so it
Right.
can't be used by AI. I was surprised, frankly, that AI wasn't the entity of the year.
Maybe next year.
I hope not.
This whole thing struck me when I don't remember which Star Wars it was. It was Episode 9, where Christopher Plummer appeared as the character Grand Moff Tarkin after his death.
Peter Cushing.
Peter Cushing, excuse me. Okay. Yes, Peter Cushing. Decades after his death, appeared as this character. I mean, it was a completely computer generated image.
Right. And that's a little different than AI, but it can be done with AI now much more easily.
Yes. Yes.
And that actually leads to an exemplar of fortitude that I will hold up. And that's unions, specifically the Writers Guild of America and SAG-AFTRA, the Screen Actors Guild and Television Radio Artists Union. They held out. They held out for a long time. They supported each other. They held out and they won. And that is an example of fortitude. It's very difficult to do. And anyone who's been on strike, belonged to a union, understands how challenging that could be. And one of the issues that they had to negotiate over was AI and images, because a person's image could be their performance, their image could be captured and then reproduced. And the movie makers, the studio, the Producers Guild of America would be able to do that without compensating them at all. And it would be like a throwback to the days of Gilligan's Island, where the performers in Gilligan's Island got paid for the first, they got royalties, I think, on the first 6 reruns of each episode, and then nothing after that. And Gilligan's Island has been in continuous replay somewhere around the world for 60 years. And they got nothing from after the first 6, I think it was 6.
I just saw a Star Trek. There's a new animated Star Trek show miniseries 8 or 10 episodes, something like that. I haven't gotten to the end of it yet, but there's I don't want to get too long in this explanation, but there's a hologram Janeway voiced by Kate Mulgrew, right? But there's one of the characters they get a hold of a Federation ship, an abandoned sort of Federation ship, and they are piloting it, these characters, and they're all young people, kids. Kate Mulgrew is a hologram assistant captain. But they go through the Kobayashi Maru, and the main character is allowed to staff his bridge with other characters, other previous officers of Starfleet. So he's got Uhura Communications, he's got Scotty at Engineering, he's got Spock as first officer. But what I noticed was all of them were deceased. And I'm pretty sure they used audio clips from the old series as their responses in this show. So there's no royalty to be paid to anybody.
Oh, the estates still own. Yeah,
I don't know. Think. But it struck me as there was nobody was hired to play any of those parts. They used existing audio clips and an animated character. And wow, how?
Yeah.
And one side of me says, "Oh, cool! They're bringing all these characters in, and they're in their uniforms from their respective generations of movies." But also kind of creepy. Every single one of these characters, except Beverly Crusher.
Yes. Gates McFadden.
Yeah. Yes, she was also in there, and I think she was credited with her own voice. But yeah, all the other ones, it was kind of creepy that they were all.
It'd be interesting to know if the estates of those people were compensated because their families still have the rights for a certain amount of time. There certainly have been examples in advertising of recreations or just clips of, but even recreations of actors, Marilyn Monroe and James Dean and others shilling for toilet paper or something. And there's copyright has an expiration date. So it gets very complicated. So, but the issue, I come back to Fortitude. They held out, and good for them.
Well, every union, in every American union anyway, in this day and age, has a tough fight.
I think unions have been another good candidate for person or entity of the year, because it's become, the 1920s was the Roaring '20s, and there was led to, I mean, unions were really significant in building of the middle class and the economy in the United States, and I think hopefully that strength in that solidarity is coming back.
Who else did you have? You have Liam Hendricks for Fortitude also?
Oh, he was a let me find my list here. He was a baseball player who overcame lymphoma, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and made a return to Major League Baseball. Reminded me of Monty Stratton. I think that's played by Jimmy Stewart in a movie. He was a very successful Major League Baseball pitcher who lost a leg in a hunting accident and came back to came back to Major League Baseball with an artificial leg. And back then, it didn't matter which league you were in, pitchers had to bat.
Yeah.
So once he made it to first base, they could put in a pinch runner.
Yeah.
But he had to show that he could catch, he could field, he could not only pitch, because the stride is important in pitching.
Right.
Would he be able to do that? But also that he could bat and make it to first base. So I put Hendricks in there because he reminded me so much of that story, and I've been a baseball fan for a long time and a fan of Jimmy Stewart too. And so,
it's funny. I don't watch baseball. I don't follow most professional sports, but so I don't care to watch a baseball game, but I love baseball movies. Movies about baseball are great.
yeah.
Because it's all about the things you're talking about. It's all about, standing there and giving your all, and, the hero hits a home run at the end, and, everything that it's all enclosed in the stadium, right? The whole story. It's baseball.
Well, I think that's a lot of what people find so appealing about sport anyway, is that it has a beginning, a middle, and an end. It's a story. It's always a story every time. There's a great example of I think one of the best advertising marketing campaigns for a cause, and it took place in Brazil, and where they had, and I've mentioned this before, they had a problem with not enough people signing up to be organ donors. So the agency there got people to sign up to be organ donors on behalf of their sport, their football team.
Sure.
And it was the campaign was amazingly effective. There was no longer a waiting list. There was just amazingly effective and meaningful because people follow sport. It's so important to people. I think there are a lot of sports I don't really enjoy watching much. But I do admire the perseverance and the dedication to prowess in a lot of sports.
Sure. Sure.
I think that there are people who play sports, professional athletes, are often held up as examples of courage under pressure. And I think their response to high pressure situations, while admirable, is not exactly what I would call courage. There are examples, however, of courage. And for example, I think the people of Ukraine and perseverance, fortitude, and courage. There are many specific examples of individuals. There's so many examples of individuals demonstrating courage. I think also the women and girls of Iran protesting for their rights and freedom following the death in custody of Masa Amini, who was killed in custody because she was arrested by the morality police who police women's appearance, and it's still persisting. And though women were killed, it has settled down somewhat. So I think those are examples as well of courage. and there's so many more. And again, I said, there's so easy to find examples of bad behavior that I don't think it's worth talking about.
No, I absolutely agree. But it's so hard to find examples, people being held up for good behavior. Or, I mean, there's like, I could find listings of local heroes of someone who
Yes.
helped someone in an auto accident or something like that. But, and that's great. That's generosity and charity. I mean, a certain amount of courage, I guess. Although it's not like, and I did find a couple of examples of say first responder, fire department,
Yes.
who ran into buildings and pulled somebody out of a fire. That's courage, no doubt about it. But people who stop and help someone who's having some kind of a cardiac arrest or anything, there's no personal courage required to do that. Just a certain amount of willingness to involve yourself in somebody else's predicament.
Well,
which is also good.
Laudable in itself.
Yes, absolutely.
That, you and I both, I know, have stopped and offered to change a tire for someone. And I remember once I was on the highway, it was late at night. I probably mentioned this before. I passed, there was a car on the side of the road and a group of women standing around. It was raining. And so I pulled my car ahead, stopped, and slowly approached while saying, "Hi, can I help? Are you okay?" Holding my hands up. So that sign of, and I changed the tire for them. And they offered me money. I said, no, of course not. And they said, well, why so many people passed? Why would you stop? And I said, how often, and this was like a multi-generational, like 6 women, the grandmother, mother, children, grandchildren, and so on. I said, and they asked me why I stopped when so many had passed. I said, how often does a man these days get to be the knight in shining armor rescuing a handful of lovely women?
Fair damsels.
Fair damsels, right. And I said, they said, is there anything we can do? I said, pass it on.
Yeah.
Pay it forward has become the phrase. But that sort of thing, so many people we know have done things like that. How many times have we, and I don't just mean you and me, but a lot of us helped somebody move or, brought somebody, made sure somebody was okay, or even spent time talking to somebody. That generosity, we talk about, generosity is one of the virtues, but generosity of your time is the real generosity.
Right. And it's even more so now that people seem to have less of it.
Yes.
To give.
I remember the, time-saving devices. We will have more leisure time.
Right. Well, I mean, you and I both grew up in an advertising and illustration time before computer generated art, graphics, layout. Everything had to be done by hand. Someone had to draw that picture. Photography was used, but even photography, reproducing photography in print was a whole thing. It took a specialist to do it.
Yes.
But they said, "Oh, think of how much work will be saved now that you've got a computer to do some of it." It didn't save any work. It just meant you had to do more.
The promise was, given the same amount of time to do things, you will be able to refine your work to a better degree because you'll be able to run through variations and more quickly. But what happened was the amount of time you got to do things was short.
Right. The expectation became immediate response, immediate.
Right.
And you could turn this. How long can this possibly take you? It's only a couple of minutes of work on the computer.
Yes.
But it's not.
Yes. It doesn't replace the time it takes to think.
Right.
And I certainly, when I was in the agency world, I had account executives say, hey, I need a logo in an hour. I said, I can design the logo in an hour, but it will be an hour's worth of logo. And you will get what you get in an hour. And I actually put up a sign on my door once, 1 hour logoizing, no wait, service while you wait. The management made me take it down because they didn't appreciate the sarcasm.
Yeah. Well, they don't appreciate the sarcasm. You didn't appreciate the lack of understanding.
Yes. I had an account executive point at my computer. I had a desktop computer with a DVD, CD, DVD drive slot. And he was describing the project to me, and then he pointed at the computer and said, "Is that where they come out?" I said, "Is that where what comes out?" He said, "The brochures." I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Well, this is desktop publishing." I said, "That's not what that means." It still has to go to a printing plant.
And that's a guy whose job it is to sell desktop publishing, and he has no concept of what it actually is.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah. So I want to call out an example of veritas, truthfulness. And I think that there are people who are certainly honest. It's, as I say, it's easier to tell the truth than to remember a lie.
Yeah, it's easier to maintain the truth.
Yes. And I want to call out or mention Cassidy Hutchinson and other Republicans who told the truth to the January 6th committee. And it led to, in most cases, the end of their political careers.
Mm-hmm.
Now they've gone on to think tanks and, news or opinion programs or writing or books or stuff like that. But for all of them, that's the post-political career. But
it's that infamy,
right,
renown dichotomy. As long as you know the name, you can sell something with it.
Right, but I think in those cases that was worth renown, telling the truth. Now I disagreed with their policies on many issues.
Sure,
but they told the truth, and that is worth saying. What?
Cassidy Hutchinson was just an aide, wasn't she? I mean, she wasn't a legislator like Liz Cheney.
She was not a legislator. She was the aide to the chief of staff.
Right.
But she worked in the administration, because that Republican administration, because she believed in those. She's a Republican. She believed in them.
Yeah, sure.
And while I was saying I disagree with a lot of what modern Republicans espouse, I agreed with a lot of what a Republican like President Eisenhower espoused. But he wouldn't be permitted in the Republican Party today. But they told the truth. And I admire that. It's worth recognizing that even people I disagree with can demonstrate virtues. Shocking, I know. But,
like Liz Cheney, I think is an even better example of someone who has had a very, very long. I mean, it's a family dynasty almost.
Yes.
She's never going to be out of work, but
she had a position in leadership.
Yes, absolutely,
and was removed from that.
She was as close to the top of that steaming pile as you can get.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and told the truth, as best as she understood it, stood up for it.
Yep. Now didn't specifically in describing the virtues. We discussed it. We discussed the idea of noblesse oblige, but said really it is the concept of noblesse oblige that to those who more is given, more is expected from them, essentially.
Yes.
That we broke it down into what we think of as the elemental or the essential virtues. And noblesse oblige is a combination of virtues. But I want to call it Jimmy Carter and Rosalind Carter, who recently passed away.
Yes.
Because their service, their lifelong dedication to using their voices and position and renown to give more rather than to get more for themselves is
just like you were saying,
laudable.
It's a combination to me of generosity and franchise.
Yes.
That's where that noblesse, where that what exactly what they did.
Exactly.
They were generous with the things they had given, and that is what. I'm in absolute agreement with you there.
And I think that I said I was going to say something, because we've both looked for examples of courtesy, examples of moderation, examples of humility.
Right. It's weird. People who are really humble don't make the papers.
Right.
Weird, huh?
And the thing I would say, all of us, each of us, and everybody who's listening to, has a responsibility to recognize the virtues in the people they know, and to acknowledge that, to thank them, to say, that was a lovely, generous thing you did. Thank you for your courtesy. That sort of thing. I think that's where I have come to in this discussion, is that we don't have to wait for the person of the year or some other official recognition. It is up to each of us to recognize the virtues in those around us and thank them and acknowledge them and praise them to other people, tell them their stories to other people, and then do our best to emulate that ourselves. And that is really what we've been discussing since we started this conversation.
Well, yeah, certainly it's more, we have spoken about more than just the internal pursuit of these things in that, and to an extent, that's what I love about the organization we both belong to, is that it does from time to time hold somebody up and say, this person at least publicly displays these virtues that we consider important. So we're holding them up as an example, and we're going to put something around their neck for future reference for you to look at and say, this person is the kind of person we respect and admire in this organization. And there's not too many, in my experience, organizations that do just that say, you can sort of climb the ranks in other organizations. Mm-hmm. But I think that has more to do with punching tickets and doing work and increasing the shareholders' investment in the organization itself. So just like in a church, you put in work, a lot of church positions are handed out for fundraising. You know, you get to be you get to have this seat in the church because you raised this amount of money for the church. How you did it isn't really the question.
Yeah.
The fact that you got it was enough. And
Ambassadorships used to be, and
exactly.
some of them still are, based on the amount of money raised or donated for a political party. That's a terrible way to choose ambassadors.
Yeah.
But yeah,
There used to be something like a diplomatic corps, right? And
well, there is, but it also
it used
was
to mean something.
gutted, unfortunately. The whole foreign service was,
Yeah.
anyway. Now we're talking bad examples again, but yeah,
Right. Well, they're so much easier. They're closer, much closer to hand.
yeah, they really are.
So, and I was struck by, I went to, in trying to research this, I put in most influential people of 2023.
Oh,
10 most influential people, 100 most influential people, 20 most, there are all these lists, but they're almost entirely about celebrities. List is made up of celebrities and entrepreneurs.
yeah.
People who are famous for being famous and people who make a lot of money. And I reject the idea that these people are actually important to our culture. That they make us better in any way. That they set an example for us to follow of any kind.
Well, I think celebrities who are only famous for being famous, I don't think add to our culture in a way, and often detract from it. I think people who become famous for doing something are much more admirable. And because their fame, their renown is a byproduct, not it's
Sure.
a byproduct of them pursuing their prowess in their particular field. It's not the fame is not the goal. The pursuit of their excellence is the goal, and fame, if it comes, is a byproduct.
What I didn't look at, which is exactly I think what you're talking about, is Nobel Prizes. I think that might have been a good list for prowess in another outside of sports, because there's several Nobel Prizes given out for different intellectual pursuits.
Yes, I'm just looking at the list. Nobel Prize, History Award prizes. This will take some research. I can't just
Right,
look
sure.
it up, but
that didn't occur to me to do that. It only occurred to me just now. So, and that's what you're talking about, is someone who has pursued a thing for its own sake,
yes,
gained excellence, and used that, or not used that necessarily, but the result of that was some great change in society.
and the person who comes to mind, and we've talked about him before because of the issue of the cognitive dissonance, the cognitive bias against vaccinations. We talked about Jonas Salk, who invented the first polio vaccine when polio was ravaging the
Right.
population, and he gave it away.
Yep.
He gave it away. It wasn't. It just. It's mind-boggling now to the modern entrepreneur or the modern mind who it's like, why would you do that? Because it was necessary. It's the right thing to do. And people don't remember, because they're people who are too young to remember and haven't heard it, how frightened people were. They think going out in public during the COVID pandemic was of concern. If you could catch polio and be confined to an iron lung, a machine that would breathe for you, and only your head was out and you were on your back and you interacted with the world through a
Well,
mirror over your head.
and if contracted as a child, it could have all kinds of
Yes.
developmental impact on your growing up, and you know, lots
Yeah.
of people were nearly crippled by it.
Well, and some were, and some who got it and recovered, then there was 20, 30 years later,
Yeah,
it came back. So,
yeah,
yeah. So, but that sort of pursuit of it, not for the, not, you know, the old saying, art for art's sake.
sure.
We used to joke art for money's sake, because that's what people seem to forget, why they start doing things, because they love doing it.
And there's a whole generation of people, I think, that protesting the vaccine, the jab, whatever derogatory term they're calling it. Almost all of them, I would say. I mean, if they're unless they're in their 80s, got a polio vaccine
Yes.
at school.
Yes.
There wasn't any question about whether you could get it, whether you had to get it or not.
Oh, you couldn't go to school if you weren't vaccinated.
Right. You had your day, and you went in the gym and you sat in the chair, and they gave you a shot and a little cup of something to drink, and you went back to class, and that was it. There wasn't any. You didn't have a choice. You didn't.
Yeah.
I think you had to bring the permission slip from your parents, but that was, like you said, here's an acknowledgement that if you don't sign this paper and give your kid, we're going to pull them out of school and send them home.
Right.
So,
yeah. Well, we've talked about truth and veritas, truth as a virtue, and we talked about cognitive biases. There's a difference between disinformation and misinformation, but both are harmful. And there's so much of it. There's so much of it out there. It's the truth will be there, but like more like Aldous Huxley wrote about, it'll be hidden in a cacophony of irrelevancies, rather than what Orwell wrote about when he said it would be hidden. It's there. You can find it, but
right. You have to deliberately dig for it now.
Yeah. There are still people who think the earth is flat.
I don't know if there's still people. I think suddenly people want to believe something so absurd. See,
that's
myself in a little trouble here now that I think that there is such a need for a person to feel like they are an individual, or that they know something that somebody else doesn't, or they are in on some secret that most people are not, that makes them feel better about themselves, that they're generally ignorant. And most of us are, quite frankly.
Well, everybody's ignorant about something.
Yeah, exactly. And we can't. Knowledge is so great in this age. There is so much we've learned, so much we have yet to learn, certainly. But there's so much we have learned that it's impossible for anyone to know everything. It's
yes,
absolutely impossible. So, but I think that there's more. There's so much more. The mind can only encompass so much, right? But knowledge continues to expand, and I think we may have come to a place where some people can't accept that they don't know enough.
I would rather they focus on two things: knowing where to find information rather than thinking they have to know everything, and increasing wisdom.
Well, sure.
Right.
But every generation says that the next generation isn't as
But
wise as we are.
no, the previous generations are pretty fucking stupid. So, I think that, but there were also some really brilliant people too. Um, I don't like the criticism of other generations. I think that's counterproductive to the community of
Yeah.
humanity to do that. Um, I think that people always are searching for ways to be individual, to express their individuality in this culture.
Yeah.
There are other cultures that focus more on community rather than individuality, but even there, like, Japan, for example, is the traditional example of the community, the whole being the focus rather than the individual. But even there's people are wanting to find ways to express their individuality more, and it's a normal thing, I think, for people to want to do, and that's why people get tattoos and have their own style and do their own thing and their own look and their own all sorts of things. Okay, great, but
Yeah,
adopting false information as a way of expressing your individuality, saying I know more because I know this secret thing.
but I don't think it's conscious. That's my point. They're not, I don't think those people are consciously trying to strike out as individuals. They just feel this internal need, and they want. It's not just I want to be individual. I want to feel superior. So
Yeah.
I'm going to adopt this thing because I figured it out. All you people are lost in the darkness. I've seen the light. I get it. So yes. I think that's where that comes. That's where the proliferation of conspiracy theories, I think, comes from. The flat Earth stuff, religion, I think, part of
the people who say do your research, when they won't accept actual research, and I've done my research. Really? Where's your lab? Where's your funding from? What how many, what are your, I remember was a state, I think it was in the State Board of Education in Texas, I think, a member of the state board, a dentist, talked about their control of curriculum for the state. And I remember him saying, it's time we stop listening to these experts. It's time we stop listening to experts. Well, I don't think you understand what expert means.
Well, I remember quite recently, I think John Kerry was being interviewed in Congress by a congressman and was asking him about climate change. And John Kerry was giving him what he, the expert, the numbers. And he says, well, you're a scientist, aren't you? You have a BS. I have and John Kerry says, I have I think, I don't know if it was a master's degree or a bachelor's degree or what it was in political science. I mean, like I have a political science degree. Yeah. And so the guy goes back into this climate change thing and saying, so can you explain this to me? You're the scientist. And John Kerry's looking at him like, do you understand what I'm saying?
Political science is,
science. It was
you paused there for a moment.
Oh, did I?
Yeah.
Was a glitch in the matrix?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, John Kerry was saying, I have a degree in political science, and the guy didn't understand, the congressman didn't understand, or senator, or whatever it was, didn't understand the difference between types of science. Science was just science to him.
Yeah.
It's like the who was it? It was Fireside Theater. I have a master's degree. No, it was Dr. Science.
Dr. Science.
I have a master's degree.
It wasn't even a master's
science.
Degree. It was a bachelor's degree.
But he said it was, and there is no degree.
He's not a real doctor. And he goes, I've got a bachelor's degree in science.
And there is, yeah. So there isn't. I think we have, once again,
what? Strayed a little?
A little. See that over there? Those are the rails. We are way off from those.
I think we just need wider rails. I think that's
yeah, I think so. Where we're going, we don't need rails.
No stinking rails. So yeah, I mean, this was our farewell for the year, saying goodbye to 2023. Looking forward to that election year 2024, boy. Can't wait.
I think the preparation for the endless amount of political advertising, the repetition that drives me crazy. I think the preparation for that has been a commercial for a new type of deodorant. And I hope that in the next year, I will never have to hear the inventor and pitch woman for this product say the words pits, under boob, thigh fold, butt crack it again, because that's a commercial for this, for a deodorant lotion that she invented. And she has been, it's like this, it reminds me of the head-on applied directly to the forehead, head-on. It was a terrible, repetitious commercial. This woman, who is a doctor, ostensibly of some sort, invented this deodorant product. And we're talking about the virtues. I don't care if it's a great product. The advertisers, the agency, if maybe she did it herself, shame on them. It got my attention, but there is such a thing as bad publicity. I will never, never buy that product. And I encourage everybody to never buy that product, because, like, I encourage people to never use Papyrus or Comic Sans. And and I wouldn't buy Charmin as long as Mr. Whipple and that stupid "Don't Squeeze the Charmin" commercial ran. And
advertising, national advertising in particular, let me just say that, has, for the most part, especially consumer goods, right, has almost always aimed at the lowest common denominator. Right? That's a thing in advertising. We both know it. We both heard it. Now,
I disagree with that, though.
Huh?
I disagree with that. It's true, and I disagree with that philosophy.
Okay, yeah, you can disagree with it as a way of advertising, but it is a common way of advertising.
It absolutely is.
But I wanted to say, I really, really wanted to say that I feel like the denominator keeps getting lower. But you bringing up that Charmin commercial made me question that assertion.
Well, the thing is, and this is another subject entirely, really, but maybe it's not. Maybe it is in keeping with the idea that it's easier to find bad examples than good. So much of contemporary marketing has been a throwback to the inept, ineffective mass marketing of yesteryear, when Wanamaker the inventor of the department store in the United States, the department store concept in the United States, so there's one in Paris, was also a pioneer in advertising. He ran a lot of ads. He made his store a destination. It was the model for the modern department store. And he famously was reported to have said, I know half my advertising is wasted. I just don't know which half. And eventually there was an era in advertising of responsibility, of accountability, that everything had to be measured, effectiveness had to be measured. And it made sense. You knew who, was specific. But it is so easy and so cheap now to blanket the internet.
Yes.
And all kinds of internet channels with all kinds of advertising. It's just a matter of getting eyes on screen, eyes on your ad, and hoping you do it enough, you get a tiny response, and
Sure.
That's sufficient.
Well, because it's like you say, it's still cost effective. If you send out
Yes.
1 million of them, because they cost you nothing to send out.
Right.
You can send out 1 million of them, and if you only get 2, well, you made money.
Yeah. Now, even the placement, we've all been on websites and see ads cycling through. All of that, buying that real estate on websites, that's all. There's an automated process of where agencies have their software, advertisers have their software. It's bidding on placing things on real estate, on internet real estate, and the software that's responding to it is
Yeah.
And pretty soon college courses will be taught by AI. Students attending will write their papers using AI. It'll be graded by AI. The writing will be done by AI. Images will be AI. And computers will talk to computers, and the rest of us can go fishing, I suppose. But we'll probably do it in a virtual reality environment, and because there won't be any fish left. So happy fucking New Year.
Well, we can talk about the almost inevitable universal income question
Yes.
someday, but not today.
Not
today, not that day.
Not that day.
So I think you had it right. I think you said happy fucking New Year. Good luck out there.
Good luck.
It's tough, but we're here for you.
Yeah. So that's the year in review. And until next time, be thou
A good night.
and true.